Hello and welcome back to Polar Night. We will be continuing where we left off, which, if you recall, is after finding June dead. It's regrettable that she died, but I'm pretty sure that whoever or whatever is going on here is the reason why she's dead, and it's probably not Stefan, Rufus. I wouldn't rule out Sharif, but not as the person that killed her, more so as the person that is kind of sort of responsible for them being there and for June's death and for probably June's bull boyfriend being also dead. We found the bodies of some of the crew members and of course of Alex's brother. And Alex apparently can't seem to really accept that. He thinks that something is going on, but of course something probably is going on. We just don't know what it is. And that's kind of bad, especially with that little, I was about to call him a name, but no. Insert word for people that believe in conspiracy theories. Yeah. Everyone is basically at each other's throat about what's going on. Dana, for her part, is trying to use her skills to try to unravel what's going on, but it's not really helping because she's being kind of abrasive. And Rufus, while kind of the more level-headed of the bunch, is also kind of a butthead. He's kind of like the himbo of the group. But if the himbo kind of had at least a little bit of what would give him authority, which is, he used to be in the military. But he is still kind of a butthead, unfortunately. So we're kind of stuck with the drunkard tiger or Rufus, unfortunately. That seems like to be a recipe for disaster, unfortunately. But anyway, so without further ado, let us continue Polar Night. We moved slowly and cautiously, Rufus taking the lead. Tabby at first tried to keep her cool, but after only a few minutes in the near total blackness, she scooted closer and hooked an arm through mine. Sorry. She spoke in a whisper, her apologetic tone nearly buried under the bubbling panic. I gave her my best reassuring smile. It's okay. Just one more flight of stairs and we're back on the main deck. It's getting hard to breathe. Oh fuck. She really did look like she was going to freak out. I'd overestimated just how much of a strengthening presence Gale was to her. Listen. Try this. Take a deep breath while counting to 3. I demonstrated, loudly sucking in air. It took her a moment to follow my lead, but she eventually did a single whooping breath that lasted probably less than a second. I ignored it, concentrating on giving the gist rather than getting it perfect. Hold it while counting to 4. I spoke in a harsh whisper, allowing out only enough air to make the words. I nodded at her in time to count. 3, 4. Then I loudly but slowly exhaled. Then breathe out, counting to 5 while you exhale until your lungs are empty. I gave her hand a pat in reassurance, and she tried to follow suit, but ended up blasting air out of her lungs in a frightened yelp. I can't. It's okay. Just keep trying. Remember, it's in. Count to 3. I inhaled. Hold. Count to 4. I tapped her hand in time to the count. Out. Count to 5. I breathed the words as I exhaled, again tapping her hand to the count. It took a few shaky breaths, but Tabby eventually sucked air noisily in, but this time it was much closer to the 3 seconds. While she held her breath, I counted for her, tapping her hand once again. Once I got to 4, I nodded. With an equally shaky breath, she exhaled, emptying her lungs much quicker than 5 seconds, but almost as soon as she was done, she started again, sucking air in. She continued, with a little of my guidance until we reached the main deck once again and found ourselves near an exterior door. The moment that we reached the door, Tabby flung herself through it into the eerie, not quite twilight, gasping and bent over. I was afraid that she'd throw up. "You all right, kid? Can't imagine that was easy on you." He placed a sympathetic hand on her back but otherwise allowed her to recover on her own. "Fine. Just need a minute." I was impressed. Envious even. Here was somebody deathly afraid of the dark, and yet she'd accompanied us below decks where there was only torchlight and she'd managed to keep it together. "Okay, kid. Sorry to hurry you, but time is of the essence here." Yeah. I'm okay." She straightened up, still looking pretty queasy. When our eyes met, she gave me a small, weak smile and mouthed, "Thank you." I admit, it made me feel warm inside. When she'd recovered, she'd led us towards the superstructure, then around it and towards the stern. I glanced out over the side of the Aran, trying to see the horizon, but the flurries of snow made it impossible to see more than a few kilometers. I'd not had time to really take it in back when I first arrived, which at this point felt like a month ago, just how desolate this place was. We really were just lost. Nothing and no one around for God knows only how far. Here. There, neatly parked in a small garage, was a snowcat, boxy and bright red. It was covered in a layer of snow and frost. It was about the size, height-wise at least, of a single-decker bus. Its cabin was separate from the bulky-looking rear compartment. It sat upon long tracks that were a good couple of feet in height. Small windows on the sides of the compartment suggested that I might be designed for living in, or at least to work in, like a camper van, I suppose. It looked pretty intact, no sign of damage or decay, but of course any machine can look fine on the outside. Tabby approached and studied it for a while, circling it and shining her torch on certain areas before squatting to examine the tracks. "Well, what's the verdict?" Rufus couldn't keep the anticipation from his voice, and I was feeling the same. A working vehicle would be a massive stroke of fortune. "Well, it's hard to say for sure. I need to take a closer look, maybe give it a test drive, but..." She straightened up and gave us both the biggest smile that she had for pretty much as long as she had been on the Aran. "It is in pretty good condition." My heart lifted. Rufus nodded, looking confident. "Fantastic news. Now, about the battery." "Probably in the front. Let's take a look." We clustered around the cabin in the front, and where, on a regular car at least, its engine would be. The front of the vehicle was almost completely flat, but after a moment of examination, Tabby pulled the cover. The front panel on the snowcat lifted and swung upwards, revealing a rather sleek-looking gray box that was neatly nestled into its housing. Judging from what little I knew of vehicles, I guessed that it was the battery. "Well, there it is." It looked pretty hefty. My skinny arms wouldn't be able to carry it far, and I doubted even Tabby helping me would make much difference. "So, how do we know if it's got any juice?" "Well, I'll need some tools. A multimeter would give us an idea. Help me look." We scattered around the garage. A door led back into the ship's interior, and a second later led into a long corridor-like room that was lined with machinery and equipment. A lathe, a pillar drill, welding tools, and a huge array of hand tools like spanners, wrenches, screwdrivers, hammers. Tabby, though, paced along the shelves with purpose, peering at each cluster of gizmos before reaching out to grab one. "Score!" It was indeed a multimeter. It looked pretty worse for wear, but it was hard to tell whether that was due to the usage or the subsequent long-term lack of it. She turned the dial and gave a happy thumbs up, and we followed her back to the snowcat. "Man, things are looking up at last." He clapped his hands together and stood back, watching Tabby as she fiddled with a battery. "Don't celebrate yet." She brushed ice from the components. "Like Garrett said before, the cold might have helped slow the battery's charge decay, but it could still be empty. Plus, even if there is a charge, the battery being cold might make it difficult to actually get anything out of it." I hate to ask, but What about if we use a snowcat to charge it? Like run the engine for a bit? Well, that could also require the engine to be working, for the tank to have gas, and if the battery was completely dead, we need another power source to jumpstart it. Which would bring us back to square one. If he was trying to keep the disappointment out of his voice, he wasn't doing a good job. We watched her work for a while, Rufus getting increasingly visibly frustrated while he banged a fist against the metal wall, causing Tabby to jump. Damn it. If June hadn't wandered off. None of us could have predicted what would happen. Why would someone hurt her of all people? Why would someone hurt any of us? He started to pace, gesturing absently. Whatever anyone thinks of Joseph, killing him for screwing up to Sylvia just feels, I don't know, too much? Especially with all that blood. That was more than just an argument that got out of hand. And June, damn, there's even less reasons to hurt her. But they were the first ones killed. It just doesn't make any goddamn sense. Something about his words made me deeply uneasy. When you say first ones, that sort of implies that you think that there's going to be more. He stopped pacing and fixed me with a stern gaze. If there's anything Sharif has said that makes a lick of sense, it's that we can't deny the possibility of someone else being on board. I hoped, prayed even, that my shitty lying skills only extended to my talking and not my expressions. Someone else was on board, and I needed to find a way to talk to him, ideally before someone else found him. You, really think someone could live this long in this place? We haven't found any signs of life, and besides, why would they kill us? That's just it. Being trapped alone on this hulk could drive anyone insane. Not Hannah. She's rock solid. Nothing can shake her. You haven't said much about her except that she was in the Navy, was it? That's where she started out. Carried her training with her into the civilian service. Always a ballbuster when needed. She'd never let things get out of hand unless... Well, guess it doesn't matter at this point. His tone and expression was odd. It wasn't sadness as far as I could tell. In fact, I couldn't really interpret it at all. What about you? Why'd you leave the army? He looked surprised at first, but then I noticed his fist clench and his eyes went narrow. Just did, that's all. From his tone, I filed the topic under leave it the fuck alone. Rufus, could you do me a favor? Rufus blinked, seemingly remembering her presence. Sure, shoot. Could you check the workshop for any spare batteries? You're running low on your flashlight? I think I have some spares. No, well, actually, I wouldn't mind some spare flashlight batteries, but, I was talking about one of these. She wrapped the snowcat battery with a knuckle. If we have any spares lying around, we might not need to worry about choosing between the radio and having a working vehicle. Well... He glanced towards the workshop doorway. It was only a few dozen meters away, but he'd be out of sight of us. And we of him. Please, I'm almost done here and I need Garrett's help. Our eyes met for a moment. It was pretty clear that there was a bit more going on. I guess I was better at spotting liars than being one. Fine, alright. But neither of you move from the spot, okay? I'll be 5 minutes. Don't worry, wandering off is the last thing on our minds right now. I gave him a reassuring smile, but he didn't return it. He turned and stalked off to the workshop. Once he slipped through the door and we were alone, Tabby sighed and leaned against the snowcat. Can I ask you something? Sure, what? Do you really think that there could be someone else on board? She looked me straight in the eyes. There was that intimidating intensity that she'd had at the start of the voyage, that piercing, analytical look. I don't know. But you must have an opinion, even if you don't know for sure. I gritted my teeth. Lying directly would only get me in trouble, and Tabby was sharp. Whatever else, I had to assume that it wasn't Connor who was responsible for the moment. I knew him enough that cold-blooded murder wasn't in his nature, even if violence most certainly was. and if Connor didn't know anyone else who survived. I don't know what to tell you, wee man. I don't remember much. The ship, it was falling apart. The crew, at least. I think Dr. Waters, she wanted me for something, a mission. I had to go somewhere. No, I had to take something somewhere. Should you tell Tabby or should you keep it to yourself? I kind of feel like she's one of the few people that you could tell. Despite the fact that she's kind of like a scaredy cat when it comes to the dark. Um, huh. But I also feel that there can't really be someone else though. I kind of feel like everything is in their heads, unfortunately. What would you guys pick? No, I don't believe so. I thought that I saw her lip twitch a little, but she kept her stoic expression. I mean, look at this place. It's a massive metal tomb. The entire time that we've been here, there hasn't been a single sign of life. No lights, no leftover food. If someone else had survived today, there would be something, some evidence, a shelter or signs that the main parts of the ship have been used. But there just isn't. With every word, a growing sense of dread filled the pit of my stomach. I felt like I was trying to convince myself as much as her. And the whole time Connor was there in the back of my mind. She watched me for a moment before looking away, lost in thought. Your turn. I folded my arms. Turnabout was fair play, after all. I can't deny what I saw in the engine room. It was just for a moment, but... Is it possible you mistook something else? The place was full of machinery and it was dark. I'm not an idiot. And being scared of the dark doesn't give me brain damage. I can tell the difference between a pair of legs and a turbine. Then you understand what you're implying, right? That an errant crew member has not only survived but was standing in the engine room with you and Gale and said nothing. She looked away again, looking deeply uncomfortable. I'm sure the thought creeped her out even more than me. Do you think that whatever noise lured Rufus away was an attempt to get him away from us? Maybe. Maybe your screams scared them off, whoever they were. She grimaced. It sucks, you know. Nyctophobia. Gail thinks that I was just seeing things because I was scared. I know she means well, but it's just humiliating. Like I'm a kid who woke up from a nightmare. I love her to bits, but she can drive me insane sometimes. Oh, by the way, thanks. Huh? For what? That breathing thing that you showed me. It, actually helped. Oh, that, is fine. I learned it off a friend. Smooth, Garrett. She sensed my hesitation, but thankfully pretended not to notice. Anyway, we should get back to work. Rufus will be back soon. Yeah. What was it that you wanted me to do again? Well, the battery has a charge, but in these conditions, it's hard to gauge its actual capacity. Try the engine. If we can start it up, that's a pretty good sign. I nodded and moved to the cabin, clambering in. Garrett, are you forgetting something? I leaned out of the door to see her dangling a set of keys. Oh, right, sorry. I know you're a Sparky and all, but you don't need to hotwire it. She gave me a cheeky grin and tossed the keys to me. I fumbled and managed to catch them before I embarrassed myself further. I leaned in, inserted the key, gave a silent prayer, and twisted. The engine sputtered. I kept the key turned, hoping. I tried again. More sputtering. My heart fell. Maybe the fuel was empty after all? Or a possible escape vehicle useless. I gave it another twist. Holy shit. All right. She punched the air and gave me a big grin and thumbs up. I couldn't resist returning the gesture. Damn, I never thought starting a vehicle would give such a rush. Can you check the fuel gauge? I peered at the dashboard that was now lit up. The glowing orange needle had swung over to the right. I felt my heart leap even higher. It looks to be about 2/3 full. Wow. Okay, turn it off. I turned the key, leaving it in the ignition. I slid out of the chair and dropped the foot or so off the cabin to the deck. Damn, I can't believe it worked. Oh, ye of little faith. I winked and gave her a toothy grin. She gave me a friendly punch on the arm. I was worried that it'd be empty or maybe the diesel had gone bad. I guess the cold was an advantage after all. Gone bad? Fuel goes bad after a period of time. In this case, it's diesel, so it lasts a little longer, but, anyway, doesn't matter. This is great. Our celebrations were interrupted by the sounds of hoofsteps rapidly approaching before Rufus skidded out of the workshop door to stare at us in astonishment. Then he gave us a big, beaming grin. Well, I'll be damned. He jogged over to us before pulling us both into a firm and slightly painful hug. I said you guys were the brains of this outfit, and boy did you prove me right. We got ourselves a working set of wheels. We both wheezed as Rufus compressed us against his powerful body. Yeah, cool. Rufus, a little tight. He finally let go, beaming at us proudly. Well, I thought that I'd be bringing the mood down when I said I couldn't find any spare batteries, but you guys more than made up for it. So does that mean that you still want to use this one? She jabbed a thumb at the snowcat. Rufus's grin faded and he looked thoughtful. You know, maybe Dana's got a point. Since we know this thing works, there's no reason that we can't go check on the others and come back for it. It's not going anywhere, right? He stared at the snowcat for a while, pondering. Finally, with a big sigh, he spoke. All right, we'll leave it for now. We go check on the others. How much fuel do we have? About 2/3 of a tank. Good, but not great. If it comes down to it, we'll need to look for more. But he clapped his hands together and looked much brighter and energized. Okay, let's go check on the others and give them the good news. Tabby and I exchanged excited grins. Finally, things were looking a little brighter. I wasn't used to being in such high spirits ever since getting stranded here. With the blizzard dissipated, at least for now, the interior was a bit brighter too. It felt less oppressive. Even Tabby seemed less wary. We even chit-chatted on the way up. But as we got to the foot of the steps leading to the bridge, we heard raised voices, specifically Dana and Aaron's. We gave each other worried looks before hurrying up the stairs. Can't be any other reason. This is bullshit and you know it. They paused as the three of us bundled through the door. Dana was standing a couple of feet from Aaron, jabbing a finger at him in accusation while Aaron was balling his fists, leaning forward in fury. The hell is going on? What's all the ruckus? She's trying to blame Carrie for the fucking charts being wrong, as if her Captain Daddy wasn't just a blameless. Who else would have been responsible for this? Not the navigator, surely. So what? Was McGregor just sat on his fat arse the entire time? Enough. For God's sake, this isn't helping. Can't somebody please tell us what the hell is going on? He stepped forward, arms folded and glaring at the pair who looked moments from tearing each other apart. Dana and Aaron paused, staring each other down as though daring the other to try and pin the blame on them. Fortunately, Gale stepped in. We found a number of physical charts that have the Aaron's route and position on it. Unfortunately, it's the wrong route. The fake one. We can't get our true position from them. Rufus looked like the wind had been taken out of his sails, and honestly, I felt the same, from feeling great to shit in moments flat. What about the battery? Did you find out if it still works? Better. We found the snowcat itself has gas, and we got the engine running. For a moment, even the two of them looked surprised and even cracked a smile, but only for a moment. So now what? We have a vehicle but nowhere to go, and a radio but no way to tell anyone where we are. What was it that June said? Something about broadcasting and letting them find us by our signal? In order for that to work, they'd need to triangulate our signal. We'd also need to contact someone first that they know to even try. At least someone in the family knows something about navigation. She muttered it under her breath, but made sure that it was loud enough for him to hear. The silence that followed was like the moment of calm before the tsunami. 1 minute it was dead silence. Aaron charged at her with a feral cry, taking even Dana by surprise. He threw himself at her, screaming bloody murder. I was so completely taken aback that it took several seconds before, even without thinking, I dove in and tried to separate them. Gail joined in, trying to prise the writhing mess of fists and arms apart. As feral as I was, I hooked my arms under Aaron's armpits and hauled him back, Rufus coming to my aid after he got over his surprise. He screamed in rage, wriggling so hard that I nearly lost my grip. Gail, followed by Tabby, placed themselves between the pair, holding Dana back, who had been reduced to furious, incoherent snarls. "Get the fuck off of me! I've had enough of you, bitch!" "Christ almighty! Settle down!" Aaron was much stronger than I was, disregarding my teeth and jaws, of course, so Rufus finally had to wrench him from me and roughly shove him back, placing himself between him and Dana. Dana shoved the two sisters away, snarling at them, eyes flashing with hatred. Fortunately, she stood her ground and didn't try to lunge at him. "God damn it, you two! This ain't helping!" "No, fuck you, and fuck you too!" He stabbed a finger at Dana, who nearly returned his glare with contempt. "I've had it, with all of you! You're on your fucking own!" He turned to storm from the room, angrily wrenching his arms free as Rufus tried to stop him. "Now just wait. Aaron, please wait. I'm done. Miss McGregor can channel her alky, gambling fucking daddy for her precious charts." Dana's look of contempt morphed into one of shock, like she'd been slapped. By the time that it registered to her to feel outrage, Aaron was gone. She stared at the door for a moment, as though unable to comprehend that Aaron would say such a thing. Then, ignoring the protests of Gail, she barged through the door and vanished. We stood in silence. My heart was racing and my arms and chest hurt from Aaron's thrashing about. Gail looked mortified, looking back and forth between the rest of us. Tabby just looked numb. Rufus crestfallen. Despite not actually being a participant in the fight, my adrenaline was still spiked and I could feel my limbs trembling. I hated this feeling. "I guess I'll go see if I can find more food." "Wait, what? What about the battery? Or the radio?" I just need some time, okay?" He raised his voice in frustration, raising his hands in surrender. He turned and trudged to the door, pausing only for a brief moment. It seemed like he was about to say something. But then, as with the Aaron and Dana, he swung open the bridge door and left, his hoof steps thumping on the steps leading back down into the Aaron. Gail was distraught. She didn't even try to hide her tears. Tabby noticed and was instantly at her side, embracing her sister. They didn't exchange words. I don't suppose they needed to. I felt a pelt of sorrow, not even jealousy, at their shared bond, and at that moment, I don't think that I ever felt more alone. "Listen, She split from her sister, wiping her eyes and nose and valiantly trying to put on a brave face, a facade of normalcy. I want to go to the hospital. To look through, Mom's stuff. I can't think of a better place to try and get answers to what happened at the end." Part of me wanted to object, to point out that we had a possible escape plan. I couldn't bring the battery to the bridge on my own. But the larger part of me was almost glad in a way. There was someone that I needed to find urgently, someone who owed me a lot of answers, and someone that I couldn't meet if we were in a group. So, heart-aching and with a building sense of dread, I simply nodded. Tabby tried to give me a reassuring smile. It went without saying that she would accompany her sister. Once the pair left, I was left alone. The stink of blood was different now. It had dried, oxidized. The only traces of Joseph he had left. Maybe it was for the best that we didn't find him. The thought of him being alive only to discover June's fate was just too much to bear right now. I trudged despondently to the door. I had only one goal for now. I had to find Connor. I didn't even know where to start looking. Last time Connor had contacted me, I had just woken up in the hospital. Gil and Tabby were investigating the place now, so I knew that I couldn't expect to find him there. Calling out his name wasn't an option either. Anyone could be listening or lurking. One of us was a killer. June had been murdered in cold blood. Joseph, who even knew at this point? But someone on board was a murderer, and at this point I couldn't rule Connor out. I wandered the living quarters deck, barely even paying attention. As I passed by each cabin, I shone my torch through the door, assuming that it was open to begin with. I started to get a sense of what had happened, or at least partially. Most of the cabins were accessible, their doors either closed but unlocked, open and intact, or, in many cases, wrecked. There seemed to be a pattern. The rooms that were wrecked generally had their doors destroyed, while the intact rooms mostly had their doors in one piece. The deep unease that I was feeling only grew. Had people smashed their ways out of the cabins, or broken in? My heart froze as I spotted something, an eye, reflecting my torchlight, leaning out of a cabin. I stopped in my tracks. Was it the presence from earlier? Gah! You're blinding me! I stared blankly as a familiar figure leaned out of the doorway, shielding his face with a hand. Connor? What are you... Shh! Come here, quickly! He beckoned me while glancing around in a panicky state. His eyes were wide with fear. I approached cautiously, never taking my eyes off of him until I was close to the door, when he vanished inside the cabin. This was one of the many intact cabins. A section of the ceiling had fallen in, revealing a wide gap with conduits and cables. The door was intact, even lockable. I knew that because the moment that I crossed the threshold, Connor roughly grabbed me and pulled me inside, locking the door behind me. Hey, what are you... But I was stopped by the sensation of warmth around me, arms pulling me close. Fuck me, I heard the scream. I thought someone had gotten you, wee man. An avalanche of emotions swept across me. On the other hand, suspicion, hostility, even hate. My brother who had mauled me and the man who could well be the killer we were seeking. But as he held me, I felt longing, an ache, one that I thought that I had long buried away. One that I'd used to feel when he drifted away and turned to drink, when I realized that it had been months that we'd barely spoken, when the only time that I really heard his voice was during his shouting matches with our stepfather. Slowly, I allowed my own hands to rest on his back awkwardly, torn between embracing him and pushing him away. Sorry. We broke away and I almost thought that I caught him wiping an eye. The ache stung even more. You need to answer my questions. Aye, of course. That's why I came looking for you. I've started remembering things about what happened, like... Connor. I held up a hand. He gave me a quizzical look, but I needed a straight answer on one thing. Did you kill June? He looked stunned at first, mouth opening and closing as though finding the words. Then came the anger. You seriously think that I just killed someone in cold blood? Just like that? A pang of very familiar fear returned. I knew his temper, but I stood my ground meeting his gaze. Acting against the primal fear and stepping up to a man taller, stronger, and provably more violent than me, I got into his face and asked again. Did you kill June? I braced, balling my fist and tensing for a swing or a lunge. The last time that I had confronted him like this was... Well, it was the last time that I had confronted him, and it was also the last time that I had use of my left eye. He met my gaze. A rumbling growl reverberated his chest as he drew himself up to his full height. But I held steady. He glared daggers, his tail curled and so did mine, a growl rumbling within me too, as I squared off. If I said no, would you even believe me? Connor, I need to hear you say the words. For a moment more, he simply stood, his eyes narrowed and fist clenched. Then he blinked, and just like that, the anger melted away. All that bravado evaporated. He looked tired. Aye, I can see how after what I did, you'd be skeptical. I would be too, to be fair. No, Garrett, I didn't kill June. I can't even imagine a reason why I would. If you have one, I'd love to hear it. It was his turn to be accusing, but I wasn't having it. She could have seen you. About the only thing that you've been clear about is that you don't want the others to know that you are here. Christ, Garrett, I didn't want anyone to see me because someone got killed. Just look at you. He gestured at me. You suspected me and you're my brother. I have even less reason to kill one of your crew than you do. Then I want you to explain everything from the start. You owe me that at least. Then I can decide if I believe you. I had him on the back paw and he knew it. Somewhere in the back of my mind, the thought occurred that if Connor had killed June or Joseph, I was in great danger right now. But something deep down told me that he wouldn't. A part of me I couldn't explain and made no sense the more that I considered it. I knew Connor. I bore the literal scars of his temper. Connor threw up his hands and gave a snarl of frustration. He paced, placing his hands on the back of his head as he turned from me, head dipped as though thinking. I swear that I'm telling the truth when I say that I can't remember much. There's just this gap. My memories are fine up to a certain point. Then start there for God's sake. Try to imagine how confusing this is for me. You appear on a ghost ship 2 years after she went missing, apparently none the worse for wear. And all you can say is, I don't remember? I'm trying, all right? He turned, giving me a more pleading look. Look, it must have been August. Yeah, we were en route to Greenland, or supposedly. I said before there were rumors that we weren't where we were supposed to be. All the bound comms were cancelled, and we were told to route any calls or messages through Second Officer Dixon and Captain McGregor. And then we started breaking through an ice mass, a big one, the one we're trapped in actually. He quickly moved to the window, looking out into the snowy landscape the Aran was entombed in. And I remembered it. Professor Hagen took a team out to take some samples. About a week later, they came back with loads of crates of stuff. They got shipped to the lab, and the rest stored in the vault. The vault? The room with the spray paint. You know the one. And did you know Professor Hagen, Alex Golubev, and several others had their dead bodies stored there? What? No, He suddenly winced, rubbing his temple. Hagen, he was unstable. Last I heard, he'd been confined to quarters. The inquiry said that the Aran reported a crew member had died and that their instruments were malfunctioning. Know anything about that? A death? Yeah, someone from the expedition, I think. I think that's when things started going to shit. There was trouble. After Hagen, I mean. People started behaving oddly. I think I was confined to quarters. And yes, there were deaths. Violent ones from fights, I think. Was there a mutiny? These cabins look wrecked like a riot took place. I don't remember, honestly. There was Dr. Waters. It was her and Marsh? Carrie Marsh, the navigator. I raised an eyebrow. They needed me for something. Some kind of task. Something they thought would help, but by that time... He growled and slammed a bunk bed post. It's like it's right there, but the more that I try to remember, the more it fades away. The next clear memory that I have is after you guys were already here. I woke up in a storeroom below decks. That's honestly it. Everything that happened between Hagen returning and me and waking up here is just... It's a blur. I watched him evenly as he turned to face me. He looked imploringly at me, no doubt aware of just how unbelievable his story sounded. But he was here, before me, talking to me. All right. The word escaped as a sigh. I didn't have a way of confirming his story, at least not yet. And what he had told me did align with what we already knew. The errand was off course, and it was more and more likely that it was deliberate. Carrie being involved with some kind of mission with Dr. Waters was definitely suspicious. Maybe I should ask Gail about it. She said that she would be going to the hospital to look for clues. Look, I get this is a lot to ask of you to believe, but I promise you I'm telling the truth. Hagen, he found something out there and I think that it was important. Like what? What could he possibly have found out in this place? I don't know exactly, but he felt that it was important to take home. That's all that I can tell you. Listen, there will be time to try and unravel this later. How did you get on with the radio? Is it working? I narrowed my eyes. How did you know about that? It's not like you guys have been quiet about it. Well, I think I fixed the radio. We have a working battery that we can hook up to it, but everyone is just... I trailed off, making a helpless gesture. People arguing. Not just arguing. I think Aaron and Dana are almost as focused on whether Carrie or the captain were to blame as on escaping with our fucking lives. Wait, Aaron Marsh? Her brother? And Dana McGregor? Bill's daughter? Bill? Captain Bill McGregor. Well, apparently they both got a load of hate from people because of the blame that fell on Carrie and the captain. You think that they have something to prove? I know that they have something to prove. The issue is that they keep getting into arguments about it. Well, I don't know what to say. You know them better than I do, but listen, you need to get the radio working to get help. Otherwise, none of us are getting home. I'm trying, but I need... He quickly waved his hand and made a shh. For a moment, we both stood in silence, straining to hear. Then... Is someone in there? Oh fuck, of all people and of all times. Connor gave me a fearful look and gesticulated as if to say, now what? We glanced around trying to find somewhere to hide him. The cupboard was full of clothes which might hide him if we took them out, but it was an obvious place to search. The ensuite bathroom had nowhere to hide within, and even if we closed the door, it was also an obvious place to hide. Then Connor slapped my shoulder and pointed up to the ceiling. Garrett, I heard you talking. Let me in. Shit. Connor frantically gestured for me to help him up into the gap in the ceiling. A thump at the door. I called out. Yeah, it's me, Stefan. Just give me a second. I interlocked my fingers and boosted Connor. He scrambled up into the gap, causing a dusting of frost and dust to scatter like a mini snowstorm. Are you okay? What's going on? Jesus, just a second, okay? With a shove, I pushed Connor's foot up and watched as he wriggled into the crawl space in the ceiling, his boots knocking against the side of the crawl space before vanishing into the darkness. I gave him a few seconds to try and crawl away, as another thump at the door told me that I couldn't wait any longer. With a deep breath, I unlocked the door and pulled it open, revealing an alarmed Stefan looking like he was about to attempt to kick the door in. He stared at me with confusion and alarm at first, but quickly his expression shifted to open suspicion. What were you doing in there? A million excuses, justifications, and explanations whirled through my mind. Searching? For clues? I hoped that sounding annoyed would mask the obvious lie. So then, who were you talking to? I froze. The look on his face told me that he wasn't even remotely convinced. Mind if I come in? It wasn't a question as much as a challenge. If I said no, it would immediately be suspicious. If I said yes... As nonchalantly as I could, I stood aside and beckoned him in. He strolled inside, giving me a lot of side-eye before pausing to observe the room. Besides the obvious gap in the ceiling, the room was in decent condition. More importantly, there weren't any places to hide besides the ceiling, just as long as he didn't look up. So, find anything? He pretended to be casual about it, but he immediately started searching the few hiding places in the room. I watched him hesitate a moment before opening the cupboard, as though preparing for someone to jump up. What? I was barely paying attention to his words. My blood must have been at least 50% adrenaline by volume. It took all my willpower to not glance at the ceiling. The clues. The ones that you were searching for? He wasn't even attempting to disguise his suspicion. His words dripped with sarcasm. He made a show of putting his hands on his hips, as though taking in the cabin's condition before beelining for the door to the bathroom. Before I could respond, he flung the door open. I half expected him to shout, "Aha!" or something, but his face scrunched into confusion when he found nothing. I admit that I felt a little satisfaction. You quite done?" He glared at me.
"You didn't answer me."
"Answer what?"
"What you were looking for. You know, the thing that you definitely were doing behind a locked door while talking to no one in particular?"
Stefan had always been a bit odd and difficult to understand, but we'd always been cordial if not friendly so far. Seeing him view me with naked suspicion and contempt hurt more than I thought it would. But when I tried to think of something, my mind went blank. What could I even say? What excuse would satisfy him? I was looking for notes. You know, diaries, logs, that sort of thing.
"Sure."
But as he rolled his eyes, they stopped at the gap in the ceiling, and I felt my heart stop. I was looking for... I nervously fiddled with my eye drops in my pocket as he slowly stepped towards the center of the room, never taking his eyes off the hole. Medicine. Fucking great, Garrett. Medicine? That was what you could come up with? I glanced rapidly from Stefan's torch to the hole and back. I don't know how far Connor had crawled in, but if even a toe of his boot was visible. It was as I felt like my heart was going to explode when something flashed into my mind. Assuming the situation does not worsen, which we have enough chlorpromazine and to last another 6 weeks, diazepam is nearly exhausted and I would strongly object to the widespread use of flunitrazepam, particularly due to its potential for abuse. Diazepam. I had no idea why the notes from the hospital came to mind. I wasn't even sure how it would help at all. But he did pause, giving me a quizzical look.
"Diazepam? Why were you looking for that?"
Because... I gasped for an answer before I decided that it was as simple as to just tell the truth. I didn't have a reason to lie to him about how I knew about those drugs. When I first arrived, before you guys found your way here and found me unconscious, I went to the hospital. I wanted to check for survivors, supplies, and for something to keep me warm, you know? He nodded, though he still looked suspicious. Well, I found a note there. It said something about drugs that the crews were using up really quickly. Diazepam was one of them. The other was... I racked my brain trying to remember. Chlorprazine? No. Chlorpromazine? That was it. To my surprise, Stefan's expression shifted from growing suspicion to surprise.
"Chlorpromazine? Are you sure?"
I'm pretty sure. Why, do you know what it is? He looked away, caressing his chin and thought. Half of me was curious while the other was straining not to glance at the ceiling that he had been about to search moments ago.
"It's an antipsychotic. Why were they handing something like that out to the crew?"
I don't know. The note was too badly damaged to get anything else. I was hoping to find some in the cabin, maybe to see if there was a pharmacy script for a doctor's note that could give some hints. I reminded myself not to go too crazy with the embellishment. Lying wasn't my strongest skill after all.
"Do you think the hospital could have more clues?"
Possibly. I think Gail and Tabby went there to search the place, actually. My heart leapt at the chance to get him away from here. And, well, I was curious too.
Sorry about,
He gave an apologetic gesture.
Just when I heard you talking, then you had the door locked.
Oh, I sometimes talk to myself when I'm stressed out or scared. I locked the door when I was searching so no one could sneak up on me, you know? I prayed that he'd believe me. It wasn't an outlandish lie. In fact, it was pretty reasonable. Right?
Tell you what, why don't we go speak to Gail? Maybe she found something, and if nothing else, we can ask about these drugs?
Oh, yeah, okay. Once again, I restrained myself from glancing at the ceiling. If Connor was still up there, he'd heard us talking. I would know and understand why I couldn't stay. Hopefully, we can meet up again soon. Then let's go. I'll bet it's warmer there than in here. He gave a little smile. I felt a pang of sadness that our previous rapport seemed to have strained, maybe beyond repair. Without looking back, I moved through the door and led him to the hospital. The warm glow of the lantern light framed the hospital door, and the sounds of hushed voices from within greeted us as we arrived. I gently rapped on the door with a knuckle. Gail? Tabby? You in there? A moment of silence then.
Yes, we're here, Garrett. Come on in.
Her voice had her chipper tone, which was a relief. I could use some of that upbeat energy right about now. The inviting light of the lantern was a stark contrast from the pale, ghostly light of the torches in the dark corridors. Tabby sat at the bed, browsing some files in a binder. Gail was sitting at the desk, poring over some papers. She gave me a smile when I entered, then looked surprised as Stefan followed after.
Stefan, are you alright? You had us all worried when you ran off.
Stefan didn't answer. His lips were drawn tightly, as though struggling to resist the urge to speak, and his gaze drifted away to nothing in particular. Stefan didn't answer. His lips were drawn tightly, as though struggling to resist the urge to speak, and his gaze drifted away to nothing in particular. I couldn't blame him for not wanting to discuss it. Gail, can I ask you something? It's about a note that I found when I first arrived.
Oh? Okay, sure.
She was still watching Stefan with concern, but I gave her a stern look, trying to tell her, with just my expression, don't push it. I moved to the desk where I found the note mentioning the drugs. The stacks of papers were new, presumably stuff Gail had found, and started to read through. Give me a sec. Fortunately, I found the note quickly. It was sitting exactly where I had left it, only partially obscured by some of the papers Gail had dumped there. Here. Gail and Stefan gathered close as I placed the still damp and fragile note on a free spot on the desk near the lamp. This note mentions a few drugs that were apparently being used by the crew, drugs that were specifically keeping note of how much they had.
Oh, let me see. Chlorpromazine, diazepam, and flunitrazepam.
Diazepam is a tranquilizer, I know that much. I'm not familiar with the other two.
Well, chlorpromazine is an antipsychotic. It's used to treat a bunch of different things, but it's commonly used to treat schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. Flunitrazepam is a generic name for Rohypnol.
Wait, you mean they had... Gail looked irritated.
Yes, that Rohypnol. Believe it or not, it actually has legitimate medical uses. It's an anxiolytic and a sedative among other things.
So, 2 different drugs to treat anxiety and another to treat schizophrenia?
The note is concerned about running low on things. Why would they be getting through so much? Diazepam is common for anxiety and insomnia. I can see why they were hesitant to resort to Rohypnol, as it's not really the same use case diazepam. It also has more severe side effects. As for an antipsychotic, I may have an explanation.
She gestures to a stack of files on the desk, one of which was open with a set of forms with typical unintelligible doctor script on it.
I was going through medical records trying to get a cause of death for the people in the storage room, like Professor Hagen or Alex.
My eyes twitched, bracing for a reaction from Stefan. Gail realized too late and looked like she was going to apologize, but...
And?
His voice was flat. He folded his arms, watching her with a blank expression. I didn't know if this was more or less worrying, if he had started ranting or crying.
Well, I didn't find anything yet, but I did find a lot of prescriptions for these drugs.
She let out a stack of these forms, and sure enough, one after the other had diazepam, with a smaller but substantial portion having chlorpromazine.
These prescriptions massively increased around late August, 2 years ago. That was only a couple of months before the RN was reportedly missing. The one with chlorpromazine mentions sudden onset auditory and visual disturbances. They also mention short-term memory loss and patients waking up in the storage parts of the ship with no memory of how they got there. Apparently, they tended to intensify in waves. Symptoms would suddenly manifest in extreme ways in multiple crew members all at once.
Stefan wore an intense expression as she spoke, hanging on every word. While she was talking, Tabby stood to come over and look at the note too.
Who is this Dixon? Since they're apparently taking orders from this Dixon, I'm assuming that it's Rufus' sister, Hannah, the second officer.
And what's this plan the captain was insisting on? It almost sounds like whoever wrote this note wanted to contact the outside world but wasn't allowed to. We trailed off as the many unanswered questions whirled around us. Tabby mentioned contact being cut off, reminding me of Connor's words. He'd mentioned August as being around the time that They'd been cut off from communicating and routing everything through Captain McGregor and Hannah Dixon. If the RN was up to something shady, that might explain cutting off contact with the outside world, but Connor said something about a mission with Dr. Waters and Carrie Marsh. I didn't want to risk arousing suspicion by just asking Gail. I couldn't think of an excuse to link Dr. Waters and Carrie to my brother that they would believe, at least not without some kind of evidence. Stefan especially, paranoid as he was also pretty sharp and I didn't want him to call me out on it. I resolved to try searching here later when Gail and Tabby were gone. Garrett, I need to talk to you about something. He gestured to the door. The look on his face was serious but indecipherable. I had a deep feeling of unease about him. I gave Gail a shrug, but when she met my eye, I could see that I wasn't alone being concerned about him. Even Tabby seemed to be watching me carefully. I shrugged at Gail, nodded at Stefan, and followed him out. We walked in silence as he led me away from the hospital. I was on edge, watching him like a hawk for any signs that he might jump me. Where are we going? Somewhere we can talk. Well, that was ominous. I started rehearsing scenarios in my mind, different ways that he'd attack me or grab me. What about here? There's no one around. Can't be sure. This continues as he led me back along familiar passages and I realized that we were heading back to the cabins. He spotted a cabin with an intact door and tried the lock. From the sounds of the smooth clicking noise, I assumed that it worked. He beckoned to me before entering. Clutching my sturdy torch in hand, I cautiously followed. He rapidly searched the only available hiding spaces, the cupboards and the bathroom before turning to me. All right, first things first. I need to show you a picture that I took and I need you to tell me if you see something out of the ordinary, got it? I watched him carefully scanning for signs of deception. He wasn't much stronger than I was and I had my teeth if I really needed to wound. I couldn't sense any hostility, but he was definitely watching me with an expectant look. Okay, what picture? He reached behind to his hip and pulled out his camera. The long lens was missing, leaving only the boxy digital camera. I guess when he'd run back to retrieve it on the Sylvia, he'd actually managed it. He activated the screen on the rear, browsing for a moment before turning to let me see. Tell me what you see. I noticed a slight tremor in his voice. Even his hands seemed to shake a little. I braced myself for what he was going to show me. The screen showed a decrepit-looking room, bare metal, worn shelves to one side, and very clearly from somewhere on the RN. It was illuminated from the camera flash, giving the room an almost surreal look. I think I recognized it. It wasn't a room, but a corridor. In fact, it was close to the sealed room where those bodies were stored. I squinted, scanning for anything out of place. For some reason, Stefan seemed to be getting increasingly agitated. I'm sorry, what is it that I'm looking for? I finally straightened up and glared at him, getting tired of his weird behavior. His expression was disappointed, upset, some expression that I couldn't quite catch, but clearly he wasn't pleased by my response. Not angry. In fact, if anything, he closed his eyes, took a deep, shaky breath, and nodded solemnly. Nothing. It's nothing. That's what you were supposed to see. Stefan, you are creeping the fuck out of... But there's something more. Another picture. He tapped a button and a new photo slid into view. This one... What the fuck? It was Sharif, clearly, and it looked like it had been shot while he was sitting down from behind and over his shoulder. Judging from the lighting, the table, and the food, it had to have been taken on the Sylvia. Actually, now that I thought about it. This was from Friday, the day that after we departed Slavbard. Lunch. Yeah, but look at what he's reading. And just like that, I heard that enthusiasm, saw the glint in his eyes as he stared at me with big, appealing eyes, a glimpse of the old Stefan that I'd met back on the coffee shop. It was clear that it was Sharif's notebook. I remembered the day clearly, and more to the point, I remembered how he'd acquired his photograph. So you did take a photo of his notebook. Sharif was right. His lips stiffened as he could clearly see where I was going. Sharif went mental at you because of it. You denied it. We believed you. I know I did,
But I stood up for you. We all did. You lied. Were you faking those tears as well? It seemed so small and petty now, but something about it cut right to my core. I'd defended him, believed him, comforted him, and the whole time he'd actually been guilty. No, I'm sorry. I was really scared. I just... When Sharif reacted like that, I panicked. But look at what he's reading. I squinted again, still fuming inside, enough that it took a few moments for me to even understand what I was looking at. Symbols. Something about a cave and... Wait. You remember those weird things in the room with Hagen's body? Those black stones with the weird markings? The symbols in the journal match them. Look on the right page, above the lizard statue thing. I could see a scrawled cross, a spiral, and a square, hardly the most exotic of symbols. But then the lizard doodle reminded me of something that I had seen here, right on the Aran, and my blood ran cold. It was a crude drawing, but with all the other context, I realized that it had to be. I've seen this before. I tapped the lizard, showing it to Stefan. It was in the lab, back when we all got together here for the first time. We searched the ship and I saw it there. Sharif was obsessing over it and the other stones. It's here? Yeah, but what does this mean? Don't you get it? I was right all along. Sharif knew about this. He knew what the Aran was up to. He was lying to us the entire time. I bit my lip, tempted to give him some back chat about the whole lying business. But I couldn't deny that it had added up. There were no reports or evidence of the Aran digging up uncovered relics before she vanished. In fact, Connor mentioned that Hagen had gone on an expedition and came back with things after they had gone radio silent. Wait a minute. During the blackout, when we were heading to the Sylvia's engines, Sharif had said somebody broke into his cabin. I glared at him. Leaving the accusation unstated, he squirmed and gave me a pleading look. Why is that the thing that bothers you? Besides, I saw more than those symbols. And did you get pictures of those? I didn't have time. Sharif barged in and I only just hid myself in time. I pinched my eyes and gave a frustrated sigh. Stefan was more duplicitous than I had given him credit for. What else had he gotten up to? All right. Let's say that I accept this. Let's say Sharif didn't know that Aran was doing stuff that it shouldn't. How does this help us, and what do you want to do about it? We find Sharif and confront him. He finally pulled the camera away and slipped it back into his pouch. Then he folded his arms and gave me a determined glare. I pinched my eyes again, harder, and sighed again, also harder. First, we don't know where Sharif has gone, and I think it's safe to say that he isn't in the mood to be found. Even if we split up, it could take hours to find him, if at all. Second, even if we found him, do you think that he'll come clean, assuming that he didn't just deny everything? He could try and say those sketches came from the other expeditions unrelated to the Aran. He looked furious and opened his mouth to protest, but I cut him off. Third, and far more importantly, can I just remind you that we are short on food, running low on basically everything else that is keeping us alive, and we should be concentrating on getting rescued. Then go fix the damn radio. You're the electrical engineer here. Sharif knew about what happened on the ship and kept the truth hidden even when there could have been an opportunity to help them. Then he lied to us. He brought us here on false pretenses, used our loved ones against us, manipulated us. As far as I'm concerned, he's an accessory to what happened here and the deaths of everyone on board. I huffed. His allegations had weight behind them. A lot of things fell into place if you assumed Sharif had been in contact with the Aran during her voyage. He was also close friends with his mentor Hagen. I didn't get the impression Sharif was faking his grief when he found his body. The chart he'd acquired was also very convenient. He'd said that he had found odd GPS coordinates that matched his second route, but we also had his word for that. Alright, assuming that I believe you, I still don't see why you need me. Because I don't really trust anyone else.
His voice got smaller as he spoke, looking away with embarrassment.
Rufus and Dana are both... They're acting weird. Aaron is an asshole and a coward. And Gil and Tabby... I don't mean this in a bad way, but won't be very intimidating when I confront him.
You want me to be your fucking muscle?
I have laughed in his face if the situation were so bizarre or dire. You stood up to him before. Hell, you stood up to Joseph, remember?
That was... I mean...
Look, I'm not asking you to make a citizen's arrest or break his legs or anything. Just be backup when I confront him.
I thought about it for a moment. Sharif was terrifying when he was angry, and he could probably break me in two if he put his mind to it. Look, before we go jumping the gun, I think that we should at least try to confirm your theory.
And how do you propose we do that?
I know that I've seen something like that lizard thing before, in the lab. If we go there, check the symbols on the stones, we can confirm if any match. And I can see if the statue thing that I saw is the same as in his notebook. He huffed, looking frustrated. It was clear to me that he had been holding all of this in for a while, and he'd been suspicious of Sharif from the very start.
Fine, all right. We go to the lab. We check this statue and we verify the symbols match.
You never know. He was obsessed with the stones before. He might even be in the lab as we speak. Despite his earlier bravado, I noticed a little flicker of fear.
All right, then let's get this over with.
He pushed past me to the door, unlocked it, and gestured for me to follow. We moved in silence. Every once in a while, we paused to shine our torches down a corridor or into a doorway, just in case. It occurred to me that discounting a third party on board, Stefan was a possible murder suspect. He had no alibi for Joseph and was one of the group who was missing when June was killed. I wanted to hang back a bit to let him take the lead so that I could keep my eyes on him, but Stefan didn't know the route to the laboratory. When we arrived at the door, I put a finger to my muzzle and gestured for him to be quiet. We crept closer, straining to hear the sounds of anyone who might be within. After a few moments of silence, I reached out and turned the handle. With Stefan close behind, I slowly opened the door and entered, carefully scanning the room for signs of anyone else. Guess he's not here.
Yeah.
The relief in his voice told me that despite his desire to confront him, he was really not looking forward to being face-to-face with Sharif.
So, this is the lab?
He paused his torch over the counters, machines, and shelves before spotting a large stone statue in the center of the room.
Damn. Is that the one?
He whistled under his breath. Yeah, and there's more of the stones and tablets lying around. Maybe focus on the big one and see if you can match any of the symbols with his notebook. He pulled out his camera and began carefully examining the markings. Part of me was starting to understand why Rufus felt so tense the last time that he was here. Now that I was paying more attention to them and didn't have Sharif to gush over them, there was something vaguely sinister about those stone slabs and objects. Sharif said that they were likely all handmade by different people, possibly offerings. All I could think of was offerings to who or what.
So, what do you think happened to the crew?
That caused them to vanish? He grunted the affirmative. It's hard to say. The bodies in the storeroom suggest that there was violence on board, but that doesn't explain where everyone else is.
I know Sharif is involved. Hagen too.
Oh shit, I just remembered. I reached into my pockets for a note that Rufus had given me the last time that we were here. Rufus found this note. It was from some guy, an engineer I think, but it was about Hagen. Blair, could you tell Hagen to stop coming down to the engineering decks without a reason? We keep finding him lurking in the accessways to the inner hull, scaring the shit out of my repair crews. He also hangs around like a weirdo, watching us work on the props and turbines and muttering to himself while giving us the creepiest look that you can imagine. I'd asked the captain, but word is that he's locked himself up in his cabin and using Dixon as his personal goon and errand girl. Out of professional courtesy, and because I don't want blood on my hands, I'm giving you a chance to talk sense into him before I involve her. Cooper. Weird. Hagen was hanging around the engine room? Also, what's this about the captain isolating himself? Dunno, but it sounds like Hannah Dixon was feared by at least some of the crew. This guy didn't sound fond of her. I've been thinking about these drugs that were getting handed out. Maybe the crew contracted something. Contracted? You mean a virus? A bacteria or mold. Who knows? The fact that so many of the crew were experiencing psychological issues all at once can't be a coincidence. Wouldn't that mean that we were also infected? We've been here at least a day and we've all been exposed to those creepy stone things. He didn't take his eyes off the statue. I swallowed hard, now suddenly hyper-aware of my own breathing. Have you seen or heard anything weird? Could you be more specific? Like, something you can't explain? I frowned at him and noticed that he was now looking at me, having paused his examination of the artifact. Aaron mentioned that you'd heard something on the bridge and scared the shit out of him. Oh, that? I was just, I don't know, freaked out. We've been on the bridge while I was fixing the radio. All that blood just got to me, I guess. He resumed checking the statue. Now that he mentioned it, there had also been that time at the mess hall, but he hadn't been there to witness it. The memory provoked an intense paranoia. I remembered both moments. The overwhelming sense of dread, not just thinking that I might be in danger, but on some primal level, knowing that that it was just outside the door, that it was simply waiting for my guard to drop. Garrett? I jerked, so buried in my own thoughts that I hadn't noticed that he'd approached me. You okay? I could hear the slight note of suspicion. It raked me and I shook my head. Fine. What is it? I found them. The symbols. They match. Suddenly intrigued, I followed him over to the statue. This one. Here. Just like this cross. And here. The square spiral shape. He pointed to the symbols and sure enough, there they were. They weren't precise matches, but the similarities were too much to be coincidence. Like I said, Sharif has some explaining to do. I couldn't quite deny it. All these things added up to Sharif knowing more than he ever should have, and certainly more than he let on. At the very least, he lied to us about the circumstances that led him to start this voyage. Satisfied now? Are you going to help me find Sharif? Wait. I just remembered. Hagen's body. I thought that I saw something in his pocket when June was... After we found June. Saw what exactly? I think that it might have been a book. Maybe a journal? Sharif told me off before I could check it though. If Hagen had a notebook like Sharif, then there would be corroborating evidence. He looked thoughtful. But Sharif was with him for a while, back when we first found him, remember? It's possible Sharif took anything on him that might incriminate him. It's worth a look though, right? He bit his lip, glancing to the door as though considering his options. Alright, why don't you check it out while I look around here some more? You want to split up? At a time like this? I'm not scared. And I'm a suspect for June's murder already, remember? If anything, you should be thankful not to be stuck with a potential killer. He did jazz hands at me sarcastically. Besides, there could be more notes or documents on what went on here. This is as good a place as any, right? Alright, fine. I'll meet you at the mess hall when I've had a look. He fixes me with an intense look. Just be careful, okay? Aye, you too. He gave a strained smile, maybe trying to be reassuring, but it just made him look like he never expected to see me again. I turned and with a growing dread departed from that awful place once more. To be honest, going back to that place wasn't something that I was looking forward to. Just the thought was enough to fill me with dread, and that was before June's murder. A sense of frustrated injustice bubbling within me. Why was I indulging Stefan's blame-throwing quest? We should be trying to get off of this death trap. Dana and Aaron's pissing match had broken us up, and Rufus and Dana's constant metaphorical dick-waving for leadership of our sorry group had paralyzed us. At this rate, we'd never get anyone to take us home. I was overcome with trepidation as I approached June's murder scene. Her body was still there, a short way up the corridor, discarded like rubbish under a tarp. Who? Who could do that? As I stepped to the door, I very carefully pulled it open and slipped inside, avoiding the bloodstains. It was the first time that I'd been inside this place alone. The bodies laid out were as eerie as ever. I tried to avoid looking at Alex, whose face covering had been removed by Stefan. Curiosity moved me to kneel by the body next to him. We'd never bothered to check their identities. It struck me as odd in retrospect, the only bodies on board and only Stefan and Gail had bothered to check. That was when I noticed a small tag attached to the wrappings. T. Young. Was this the name of the deceased? It occurred to me that Stefan may have had a reason to check Alex's body. Turning and trying not to look at his face, I quickly spotted a similar tag. Abe Golubev. So that's how he knew. That's what made him check. I moved between the bodies, checking the name tags one by one. Nothing I recognized. I guess I should tell the others the next time that I see them, whether it would be a reassurance. I found doubtful. I glanced over at Hagen. Without Sharif now, I guess that I could take a closer look. I squatted by him. The look on his face was haunting. Had he died here alone, locked inside? And his pose, like he'd been holding something, but we hadn't seen anything like that, not even when we'd first investigated the room. Was this really the guy that was responsible for the Aran's fate? And why had he been locked in? Was this a cruel execution? Or was he left here by accident, forgotten as the rest of the crew evacuated? Seeing his frozen remains here in a makeshift morgue amongst most of the former crewmates having apparently been sealed up and left to die moved me to pity. No one deserved a fate like this. With shaky breaths, I reached for his pocket. The moment that I touched him, I winced. The flesh underneath the fabric was solid. He was almost as much a statue as that lizard thing he'd apparently hoodwinked the Aran into digging up. I slipped a hand into the pocket, but I already knew. I'd seen something in it before. When we'd first found it open, I should have felt it by now. It was gone. The book or whatever it was missing. I sat back on my hunches and considered. Anyone could have taken it technically, but I felt like I knew who the culprit was. Gah! Jesus Christ! An explosion of agony shot through my eye, the most intense that I have ever felt in my life. I toppled back, clutching my eye. This wasn't even like a thunderclap. It felt like something had driven a red-hot spike directly through my optic nerve and into my brain. Drool leaked from my mouth as I curled up. I didn't even have the strength to reach for my eye drops, and even if I did, the pain was so great that I doubt that I'd be able to pry open my eyelid. There was a noise. A voice? Had someone followed me? Garrett? I think that I was screaming, but I couldn't tell. Part of me wanted to rip my eye out of its socket if it would mean even a minuscule amount of relief. I felt a hand touch me and finally managed to open my eye. Someone was there. Had Stefan come to find me? Tears poured down my cheeks and blurred my vision. Fuck, it hurts. I could barely get the words out as the agony was so great. I wanted to tell them to get my Diclo in my pocket, but... Connor? The figure moved like a greasy oil slick across my vision, getting closer, threatening to envelop me. You did this to me. You fucking took my eye, you son of a bitch. His form seemed to swim before me. It must have been the tears of agony filling my eyes. But I didn't care, because I knew that it had to be him. I wanted to hurt him. I wanted to fucking hurt him. I'm gonna... Cold. So cold. But the pain was gone. And yet, I felt empty, spent. I forced open my eyes. I couldn't see anything. It was just pitch black. But I could smell, and I knew what scent that I was detecting. That was when I noticed a figure lying next to me, an unmoving figure. My eyes adjusted to the darkness and the figure. Oh God. Suddenly the fear energized me and I scrambled to my knees. It wasn't just a scent, it was a taste. I couldn't feel any pain, which meant I heard paw steps thundering closer, the sound of a familiar voice is calling out. I stood, my legs like jelly, and I staggered back, away from the figure on the ground. My hands were sticky. I could taste metal whenever I swallowed. It was on my face. Fuck, it was in my mouth. Who's there? Who was... Garrett? Jesus, what? Oh. Oh my god. Gail! To be continued. Did you really just kill Gail? Wow. So... I really don't know what to say about that, because I mean it kind of makes sense in a way if somehow Gail was following Garrett and was like, oh, he's in pain, here, let me help him, you know, because she's a nurse, but like then ends up getting attacked by him because he thinks that he's seen Connor, who he thinks is on the ship. And I say think because we don't know if if Connor is real or not. Because what's his face here said that Stefan said that he heard Garrett talking, but he didn't hear, or he didn't word it like, I heard you talking with someone else, or I heard the voice of someone else. It's, I heard you talking to someone. It's late, by the way. This has gone on for 4 hours, so good luck to me for editing. I really don't know what to say, because this is really weird. Or I didn't expect the death of Gail, if it is indeed Gail, because she could just be screaming for Gail, not because Gail is the dead one. But considering that Stefan is probably not there, that's probably not Connor. Rufus is alive. Dana is alive. Tabby is there. The only other person that is missing is Sharif and Gail. So it's probably Gail, unfortunately. You know, the funny thing is that this is just one of two routes, or one of two possible routes, because there is a sort of route change earlier in the story when the ship starts, their original ship starts to sort of like get little, that it's starting to show that it's not really good. And they're like, hey, should we turn around or should we keep going? And right now you're playing the route or watching the route of, let's keep going. I'm tired. It's almost midnight. Why do I always record when it ends up like midnight for me? Things have gotten very twisty. I still feel that that there's something also going on with each character that they're not saying. My guess is that they're also seeing people that shouldn't be there and they're keeping it to themselves because, of course, the person probably is telling them like, hey, I'm here, but I don't feel like talking to these other people because I either don't trust them or whatever. So keep it to yourself, okay? Bye. And because whenever it comes up where the conversation of, maybe there's somebody else here, everyone is like, oh my God, there is, oh my God, that is such brand new information, oh my God. Everyone is acting very suspicious, unfortunately. So it's very hard to tell right now who could be the killer, who, or what's going on really. I really hate that this guy Stefan is on here because of course, you know, Garrett is the main character. And if the story ends up changing to Stefan, I'm gonna be mad. It would have been better if it was Garrett first and then it switched over to Stefan. If that's what's gonna happen, okay? My computer also does not like the snow effect because it's like right now. I'm stumped, to say the least. I don't really know what's going on, actually. Well, I mean, aside from the whole, like, these people are seeing things. And the whole thing about distributing the antipsychotic along with the sedatives, basically, it kind of seems like the people that were on board the ship were also experiencing something similar. They were seeing and probably hearing people that weren't there. And they were being medicated for it, but eventually it just turned into whatever it is that happened. That there's probably bodies somewhere in the water that they just didn't see because they're covered by snow now. Or they're eaten away. There's probably fishes down there that probably ate them. It probably is true that Sharif knew something. And that is the whole frustrating part about the story where nobody's talking with each other. They're all just pointing fingers and accusing, but like really nothing. Like, what is your only priority just to shift the blame from your relative possibly having done something bad? The only thing that is on your mind instead of, you know, getting off the ship safely, going back home and going like, well, we found the ship. Somebody else can, you know, find evidence as to whose culpability or whatever. But whatever. Anyways, so what are your thoughts? Write it down in the comments, and thank you all for watching / listening. If you would like to play Polar Night yourself, you can do so by going down into the link in the description, which would have a direct link for the itch.io page where you can download and play the game yourself. If you would like to support the project, you can subscribe to their Patreon if they have one, because I don't remember if they do or don't. And if you would like to support the channel and help support me, you can become a channel member, which gives you earlier access to these videos as they're being scheduled. And, you know, it tells me like, hey, I like your videos. Here's some money on a monthly basis. And I go, thank you. Here's my videos that are being scheduled earlier so you can watch them. Also, I have a Ko-fi in case you don't want to do the whole channel membership thing. All support is appreciated. And I do have a throne in case you're feeling overly generous. But yeah, so... Anyway, so I guess that's it for now, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.